Oh, what's going on here?
We want tigers. We'll get tigers.
Three's a crowd.
Hi, I'm Peter Clausen from Bugs in Cyberspace. I've had my website up since 1997. I sell pet bugs. Today, we're doing a video about dung beetles, including some of my encounters with them in the wild, and then, most importantly, some care information for raising Phanaeus vindex, the rainbow dung beetle. Now, the colors in these two species of beetles can vary quite a bit. But what we're looking at here is that sort of orangey red portion of the body. It's called the pronotum, and it's just behind the head and before the abdomen, the screener part starts. And in this one here on the right, this is Phanaeus difformis. See the shape of the pronotum is just slightly different. Let's flip this around here. My hands are so dry because it's coronavirus time and we've been washing them like crazy, right? So you can see this little extra scoop, kind of like a half moon there. That's difformis. And Phanaeus vindex kind of comes down to a little bit of a point. This one has the point too, but the vindex doesn't have that same obvious circular or half moon shaped depression in it. And like I said, it's possible that these two species could hybridize, although not males. And these are major males. They have very large horns. And they use that to fight off other males when they're competing for females. You can imagine that it's not particularly good for digging, probably. I'm going to show you a minor male. This one here is a minor male. He definitely lacks that major horn. And the science of horn formation is called allometry. And there's all sorts of theories as to why there is this dimorphism, two shapes in the horns of many different kinds of beetles. So he would be a minor male. You can see also that he has sort of, it looks like two bumps there on his pronotum. And that's sort of analogous to this bump here and this bump here. I will show you what a female looks like. Get two females actually. These are the females. And so this one here was actually our male. To see the two bumps there? This is a female. She has sort of a rounded section right there, sort of comes to a point. This one's burrowing into my hand. It's something they do. And so you can see up there, she doesn't really have two bumps. Instead, she has just that sort of flattened line. Got to drop some of these beetles here. And so, female, female, male. He has those two dark points right there. And they don't bite or anything like that, but they really do try to burrow in there between your fingers. They are day-flying beetles, so they are diurnal, and the heat activates them. Room temperature is fine to keep these at. Ideally, you'll want them a little bit warmer. It gets very warm in the desert, but not, of course, underground where they spend the majority of their lives. But if you want to see them fly and you want them to have an active tank, never let it get too dry because that will shorten the lives of your beetles. But if you warm them up and let them dry out for a few minutes, they will often take flight. It's probably about 68 degrees in my house right now, and so these ones aren't particularly inclined to fly, but we will take some flight videos of them here in a few moments so that you can see what that looks like. They have a great buzz, which we may or may not hear if I'm doing it in slow motion. So female in the front, female right there, and then the minor male, which can be confused for a female because he doesn't have much of a horn at all. Take a look at this blue one here. Striking coloration. They're all very beautiful. Like I said, I believe this is probably Phanaeus difformis. And they do play dead a little bit. They'll tuck their little legs into their bodies often when they play dead. This one is just now, of course, waking up when I'm trying to demonstrate the death feigning pose. Look at a few of them here, see if we can find one that's going to tuck itself in, play dead. It seems that the females are usually more likely to do it than the males. See that one there? It's all tucked in, playing dead. And this one's really burrowing in between my fingers. Oh, there, rights itself rather easily. So just one of the most spectacular looking beetles in natural sunlight. Maybe I'll be able to film a short scene of that here in a little bit if the sun comes back out. They are just brilliantly colored in greens and reds and oranges, the gold on either side of the pronotum up there in this one, and then those sort of pollen colored yellowish orange antennae. And the way they move is comical. Never gets old watching these things. It's always an exciting time of year every year when they come back into stock. Request. They ordered these beetles are real, Phanaeus Rainbow Dung Beetles, and requested, can you draw the beetles at a dung beetle disco dancing under a dung disco ball? Did I do it right that time?
Yes.
Look at those beautiful shiny beetles. And what's going on with that dung ball? Why is it so glittery?
Because the horse ate glitter.
Look at these guys right here.
You should make them dance. Here, I'll make them dance.
My kids are so much better at that than I am.
The video and
Oh yeah. Wow.
oh, there are greens. Tons of them. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a few green ones. Yeah, take all the greens.
This is amazing. There it goes. You're just out here teaming up again. They got some rocks sticking on there in pairs. Oh, what's going on here?
Tigers, we'll get tigers.
Three's a crowd. Persistence.
Boy, it does smell like shit out here, doesn't it? Yeah, see, that's a dung burrow, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like they pulled the ball out though because maybe they were getting disturbed here.
Yeah.
Not the greatest spot for building a home there in the middle of the road. Quite a few green ones over here.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, we're gonna catch on.
Oh, they've got two of them here. A green one, it's his ball, but the black one was trying to steal it from him.
Oh, this is so funny.
Chased him off.
Look at him
Yeah, that color.
doing this thing. Oh, that's so cool.
It was sunny out here a few minutes ago. I was going to make a good portion of this video here outside and do a demonstration tank, but since it's raining now, I'm going to make this short and sweet. This is a good size container here. I recommend a minimum of a 10-gallon for these dung beetles. 20 gallons is better. I don't know how many gallons this bin is. I'm guessing it's probably about 15 gallons. You want to use a minimum of 8 inches of substrate depth in here. A little bit of airspace on top so that you can add the dung, see them moving around. This is a really good size cage. I also like it because it's translucent, not completely transparent. See through it pretty well, see what's going on there. If you're lucky, they might even build a chamber or a tunnel down the side right here. So this is a good sized container, and you can use a glass one if you want to. It's a little bit heavier. These are very inexpensive. They're available at most any stores, department stores that would sell storage type containers in that section of the store, or other container stores. It's really starting to rain now. These beetles live in many different states in the country, and there's a lot of variation in the soil that they may deposit in. And so the most important thing, now you can use topsoil or compost or even soil from your yard if you want to. I might recommend that you freeze it first just to make sure there's no pests or anything in there. It's not absolutely necessary, but it never hurts. Anyway, when you put it in here at a minimum of 8 inches, compact it down. This will help when the adults are burrowing. It will help to maintain the structure of their burrows, their chambers, their tunnels, to keep them from collapsing in on themselves. If the soil is too loose, then it's going to cause a cave-in, or going to bury them possibly, and they're going to have to start over. You don't want to deal with that. So push it down nice and firm so that it's compacted. And you might also mix some sand in there, because that often helps. Now it's going to hail, I think. That often helps in providing integrity to the burrowing aspects of the soil. I'm going to get out of here. All right, I'm just back inside from trying to make the video outside. It started raining, and I grabbed this book to show you guys. Check it out. It's called The Complete Guide to Rearing the Rainbow Scarab and Other Dung Beetles by Orrin McMonigal and Stephen Barney. I've had the pleasure of meeting both of them in the field in Arizona. And this book here is pretty much the only source of information on the topic of keeping dung beetles, besides anybody else who has kept them at this point. I've been offering them through the website for, I don't know, maybe 8 years now. I've had a really consistent source for them for probably 5 years now. And this book here has a lot of really great information. I'm just going to touch on some of the information about caring for them. In this book, there are chapters on their background as well as related species. You can see on the back cover, there are quite a few others that are mentioned in this book. It talks also about their behavior, captive breeding them, collecting them, what to feed them, and just has a lot of really great information about them in general. I helped edit this book, actually. You can see my name on the acknowledgements page. I guess Orrin and Barney put this book together back in 2012, and it's now 2020, so that was 8 years ago. I imagine that I've been keeping the Beatles and offering them through the website longer than that. Time just gets away from me. Been doing this a long time. But we were outside looking at that container, and I said that you should put a minimum of 8 inches in there. And the reason for that is that these are a tunneling kind of dung beetle. In nature, what they will do is, as soon as the cow or whatever animal that lives in their habitat defecates, the beetles are very sensitive to that. We'll take some close-ups of their antennae here later in the video, and you'll be able to see those little antennae vibrating back and forth. And they can detect, I don't know from how far, but there's a funny story I can tell you about. I guess I won't say who it was, but one of my friends on the Arizona trip had a little bit of a bathroom emergency while we were out in the middle of nowhere. And he came back a few minutes later and he said that immediately the beetles showed up. And I'll just leave the story at that, but many a dung beetle keeper has actually used their own waste as fodder for their pet dung beetles. I know quite a few people personally who have done that, and usually people make jokes about it. It comes with the territory, that's just fine, but it is actually done in practice too. And so when an animal in their range, and these beetles are very widespread, the Phanaeus vindex and the Diformis I also offer through the website. But the range is very wide. They go up through the Midwest, down to Florida, over to Texas, into Arizona, and lots of states in between. And when they find a fresh pile of dung, what they do is they burrow into it and beneath it into the ground, and they will come up from underground and continuously pull bits of dung back down. And they'll have a tunnel right next to the dung or beneath it, and that provides protection for them. They don't have to travel around like some of the other dung beetles, like the ones that roll dung balls that you might be more familiar with from nature documentaries. And I have some good video of that too, and we'll also show that. And I might as well pop that in here as a clip right now. So enjoy that and come back and we'll talk about the tunneling versions as opposed to the ball rolling dung beetles. So there's your clip of the ones that actually roll the balls across the ground. And through that rolling process, it actually helps to shape the ball into a sphere, which then the beetles, they dig a tunnel when they feel that they've gotten away from everything else. You know, they'll roll it for usually a great distance compared to their size. They can't carry it away through flying. They actually have to roll it. And again, that helps to form the shape. And then when they find a place that's suitable away from all of the chaos, because there's a lot of activity going on there over by where the dung was deposited, as you saw in the video clip, they will tunnel down, bury it. The female will deposit her egg in it. And but with the Phanaeus, these rainbow dung beetles, they don't roll the ball away. They build the ball underground in their tunnel system. Within a chamber, it's called a brood chamber. And the little ball itself that they lay the egg in, it's about the size of a golf ball in the case of this species. And within that chamber, they will build it sort of upright and there will be a little bump on the top of this mass of dung. It's a perfectly spherical ball of dung, and the egg they will lay up on the top. You'll see a little bump on top of it. And it's important later to pay attention to where that bump is, because if you are the type of person to harvest the finished dung brood balls out, and put them in another container, then you'll want to place them in the new container so that that little bump is pointing up still, and rebury them. We may come back to that. So back to the life cycle. So the female, she creates this brood ball, and after she lays the egg in it, I think it takes about a week for her to construct the ball, actually, before she lays the egg in it. And then after some period of time, I'm not sure how long that is, I would guess it was under a month, the egg will hatch, and then the larva, a first instar larva, will begin to feed within the dung ball, what mother left for it. It'll actually spend its entire larval cycle, the portion of its life cycle that it's in the larva phase. And like other beetles, they go through 3 larval instars. So there's the egg, it hatches, and there's a first instar grub or larva. It grows for a period, and then after it reaches a certain size, and that's probably based on how nutritious, how big the dung ball was, perhaps, it will then shed its skin, and it will be a larger second instar larva. Sometimes they call that L2. It'll grow some more, and it will become L3 or third instar. That's the final larval instar, and it's also the one that takes the longest. Somewhere maybe 6 to 12 months later, the larva will pupate, and so it will shed again, and it will be a pupa. That's the thing that looks a little bit like a sarcophagus, possibly the source of information for, or inspiration for, the ancient Egyptians when they decided to make mummies, hoping that, like the beetle, the adult beetle that comes out of the pupa, that the people will someday come back to life again. At this point, I should mention also that in ancient Egyptian mythology, I believe that it was a dung beetle that they believed rolled the sun across the horizon. Kind of a neat thing. Actually, you know what? Is it over there still? Yes, it is. I think this is actually pictured in Oren's book here. I have this piece of art. Now, this isn't a real artifact, but I do believe it is modeled from a cast of a true artifact. It's a dung beetle. Egyptians got some, what do they call the script? Can't remember what it's called right now. But hieroglyphics, that's what they are on the back there. This section of the beetle's body right here, by the way, is called the clypeus, and they use that to dig and probably to shape the brood balls a little bit. And so in your tank, you're going to want to add in dung on a regular basis, because unlike in nature where there's a fresh cow pie or something and the beetle's down there and it knows when it has the right amount of everything to construct the brood ball, you don't necessarily know how much it's going to need. The dung that we offer it is of our choosing rather than the beetle's choosing. And so I would recommend that you put in about 4 ounces. We know that the brood balls are about the size of a golf ball. And so you're probably going to want to put in a little bit more than that, and especially if you have multiple beetles in the tank. And I might even recommend that you put it in a few different places in the cage, then they will, maybe a female over here, a female over here. They'll build their own, they'll have their space to be away from each other, to do what they need to do to build their chambers that they then build their brood balls in. And you will, if you're lucky, notice the dung disappearing. If the dung is not disappearing, it may be an indicator that it's not the right kind of dung. It seems that there is a lot of variation. Beetles don't seem too particular about what kind of dung it is. They don't seem too particular on what kind of soil you're using, for example, as long as it's relatively moist and will hold its shape while they are tunneling and not collapse. I have known people to use cow, horse, pig, we say human, rabbit, reptiles, including bearded dragons. I have a bearded dragon myself, and I have in the past experimented with that. I will point out that when I get shipments of these beetles in, and then I ship them back out to my customers, I don't actually, during the time that I have them, feed them any dung, just for sanitation reasons. They are wild collected beetles, and so I get them in, and then I usually sell that batch of them within 2 weeks, and I will offer them beetle jellies, and that's the only food that I offer them. I also don't offer them a deep substrate. I'll show you my holding tank for them here in a little bit, because I don't want them constructing brood balls. I want you guys to have all of the eggs. And so you can look on my website on their sales page. There's some more information on there, and this video will be on there as well. And I have some customer accounts, people that have told me in the past, you know, and I think I dated them too. It says, so-and-so fed chinchilla dung to their beetles on such and such date and found that they accepted that. The truth is, as long as the dung is fresh, I think I have yet to hear about an animal, dung from a particular animal that wasn't accepted. If any of you want to put in the comments down below your experiences, share them with the rest of us. That's greatly appreciated, because this is the only sorts of information that there is in the entire hobby, as far as I know, about keeping them. And so this is still a new experience for all of us, and we have lots of opportunities to learn from each other, and it's often through my customers that I learn anything at all about many of the animals that I offer. And so I appreciate it if you guys will work with the community here and comment down below and let us know what animals are working for you in terms of the dung that your beetles are accepting. And so back to the females and their habits. You will see the dung disappearing from wherever you're offering it in the tank. And you may see at some point that the female has closed off the tunnel that's near to where the dung is up on the surface. And that is an indicator that she has collected enough dung and that she is now moving on to the phase where she is constructing the brood ball. Now, after a couple weeks go by, I would say wait a couple weeks, or if you happen to see her back up on the surface again, you may not know which beetle it is, but you might offer even a little bit more dung just to see if she does come up and start collecting for maybe building a new chamber. A lot of people will, at this point, once a couple weeks have gone by since the tunnel was closed off, go down in there and collect the brood ball. And the reason for that is it's a rather confined space, these tanks that we use, and the females will continue to build new brood balls, but they don't want to disturb the area where their other brood ball is. And so we go down in there and we collect them, and we put them into a new tank, paying attention to where that little bump is on top of the brood ball. Pull that out and bury it in a new tank of substrate. It doesn't have to be a big tank, it just has to be deep enough to where you can bury it and keep that substrate kind of moist. Dryness is probably the main concern that keepers have with the development of the little larvae inside those brood balls. So once you've collected it out of the tank where the adults are, you can then start offering dung for that female again, and she'll repeat this cycle. Come up to the surface, she'll dig down, you know, you might push, after you've dug in there and everything, kind of push back down on the substrate to compact it so that she can tunnel through that properly. And you know, you have to be a little bit careful, depending on the size of your tank, about disturbing other female dung beetles in the tank. If you accidentally dig too soon, you'll find that you know, the ball is not completely made yet, or it's soft, it hasn't hardened a little bit. In this book you can see some photos of cross sections of ones that have been accidentally broken into, and that provides an opportunity in the book, of course, for us to see what things look like inside there, and it's really quite fascinating. But more often than not, if you accidentally break a brood ball open before it's really had a chance to harden up, you know, a week or two later after the female's finished it, that will end up resulting in the larva dying because it's a very compact ball. It's a very perfect system for the entire 6 to 12 month life of that larva as it's developing. So you have to be very careful about that. So this is the container that I keep them in. Just a holding tank. It's not a breeding tank. My lid. Been using this tank over and over again for many different things. And I just put that male in there next to a jelly cup. But I guess he decided against it. Pop another one in there. These beetles feed on liquids, and typically in nature they're feeding on the liquids in the fresh dung. They can't really chew through foods like many other beetles, and so these jelly cups are what I feed them when I'm holding them. You can also feed them fruits. Soft ones are best, moist ones are best. Peaches are good. You can also feed them little capfuls of sugar water. I use things like this in those cases. You don't want to make it so deep that the beetles are going to drown in there, so you might sink a few pebbles in there. And then just mix some sugar and water together and the beetles will come and drink from that. Pop another one here onto this beetle jelly. They're pretty secretive about their feeding habits. This one is probably, well, you saw the substrate moving beneath it. There's actually tons of them buried here in the substrate. And so they like to stay hydrated. The dryness will, in the long run, shorten their lives. And so it's best if you keep a slightly moist substrate like this. See how it holds its shape? That's because of the moisture content in it. In terms of a holding tank, even moist paper towel is better than a dry tank if you just had moist paper towel on the bottom of this. But again, this is not a rearing tank. It's not a breeding tank. And so this is just a temporary holding one that I use because I don't want the eggs to come out of them. I want my customers to be the ones to breed them. Dump these other beetles in here. At this point, the ones that we were taking a video of upstairs, and watch them disperse. See that they are all burrowing down very quickly. Living jewels. Except for you. This one likes the camera. Pop you over here onto the jelly again. See how it goes. It looks like it's having itself a little drink there on the surface of the jelly. See if we can maybe even improve upon this angle here. This is a female. See that black band right there on her pronotum. That section just behind the head with its clypeus. And this part of the body here is the abdomen, green, and the underside of that same section of body. The legs attach to the thorax, which is where this pronotum is, the sort of reddish area. And this one seems to be taking a nice long drink from the jelly. Oh, looks like we might have another one making its way over. hard to say how long they live. I've had customers that tell me a year later that theirs are still alive. I might guess that 4 months is a more typical average, but it really depends on how frequent and fresh the dung you are offering is, and maybe also the age of the beetles at the time you acquired them. That's never really known. This one's kind of funny because its feet aren't even on the surface of the substrate. They're just kind of hanging up there, so it must have been really thirsty to keep itself in a position like that, just sort of teetering there on the edge. And our male over here doesn't seem to be taking or showing too much of an interest. You can pick the males up by the horn like this. Doesn't hurt them. Hoping that we might get him to feed a little bit. Try one more time and then we'll leave him alone. Watch his little antennae wiggle around. And you can sort of see his palps, little mouth parts down below there, maybe taking a taste. And maybe you can see the eye there, just to the left of the horn, right above the left antenna right now, a little black spot there in that section of the head. This horn is a cephalic horn. It attaches to the head. Rhino beetles, on the other hand, they have a cephalic horn, and then they also have a horn that comes off the pronotum, which in this beetle is that sort of shield-shaped reddish section. You can imagine their burrowing lifestyle underground there. That clypeus on the front, acting like a shovel in many cases. Now, this substrate is just coconut fiber. It's not suitable for them to live in long term if you're trying to breed them. I once had a dung beetle, one of these rainbow dung beetles, that lived in the bottom of an orchid mantis tank for a long time, and I swear it must have sustained itself on fresh mantis dung. It lived in there for 4 months without anything else. It wasn't actually mine. I had given it to somebody who worked at a doctor's office. They had an orchid mantis there, and I gave them a dung beetle because all of the people that came to the doctor's office really enjoyed seeing it, especially the children and returning patients. They always asked, where's the mantis's name was Kiki. Where's Kiki? And then that dung beetle, beautiful shiny green beetle, living down in the bottom of it. So these beetles might even feed on the dung of mantises. Of course, they would need a lot of it, more than one mantis could regularly produce, to form a brood ball out of it, if it were even possible. Kind of fun to watch the ground shifting as the beetles dig through it. And that's our video, folks. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Always appreciate your comments. This is a video that I've wanted to make for a really long time. It helps to inspire some of you, instill confidence in you about keeping these beautiful beetles. It's always exciting every year when they come back in stock. Funny to watch them take a tumble. Some dung beetles, people call them tumble bugs. They're usually available from about the beginning of March through to maybe June. And even though they're out in nature still, I usually stop selling them at that point because we start to see a higher rate of die-off with those late season specimens. Thanks for watching.
They wanted it on a rainbow slip and slide.
That's amazing. And this person, their middle name is Atlas, and so they had requested an Atlas moth. And one of the things about the Atlas moth, have you ever seen this moth before? It's going up here. This is a snake. It mimics a snake. And the real moth looks like that. It looks like a cobra. Yeah. Oh yeah, look at the water splashing. He's having a good time.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
He's wishing it was poop.
There's a pot of poop at the end of the rainbow.
Hey, if you like me, give me one of those thumbs up. And please subscribe and hit the little bell so you know when I post next. Please share me with your friends on social media. Thank you for watching.